Welcome back, Chappelle. All right, we are going to be having the shortest flip of this entire unit, kind of finally talking about the long stretches towards the end of World War I and getting to the final summation of this war so we can then move into the rise of totalitarian dictators leading into World War II, and then we can also get into the rise of fascism as well as a part of in conjunction with the totalitarian reigns of dictators in Europe following World War I. Now, the great thing also is this will be a great chance to take an in-depth study and understanding how the fallout of World War I is going to help lead directly to World War II, and it also continues the narrative that this war very much so could have been avoided and how it was just like a very large calamity in and of itself that just spiraled completely out of control. A lot of it being the state of affairs following the Industrial Revolution, hypermilitarism, imperialism, all of these things coming to a head. And, of course, now we're getting to the brink of a war being ended because one of your biggest allies in Russia has dropped out due to their communist revolution. We have the Germans thinking that they can refocus their entire attention on the Western Front now that the Eastern Front is completely gone. We have a struggling Austrian-Hungary Empire army just trying to hold out for as much of the war as they possibly can. We have the Ottoman Turks that are still very relevant. However, the British, under several other figures, are leading large campaigns against them. So with this, though, we are going to need to kind of come back a little bit to this concept of unrestricted submarine warfare. So in review, remember the first thing that put Germany on the radar of the United States was this use of unrestricted submarine warfare. So with that, Woodrow Wilson is going to, of course, hammer Germany after they sank the Lusitania, right? The Lusitania being that cruise liner, which killed 128 Americans and 1,200 regular civilians on a European passenger boat, right? Because that's what unrestricted submarine warfare is. Destroying a non-military target, or quite frankly, using a submarine to destroy any target, period, point blank. And then as we began to move forward, we started talking about, of course, the Russians then drop out. So then we took a pause and we ran over to Russia and we talked about Vladimir Lenin, the Bolshevik Revolution, the March Revolution, the February Revolution, the October Revolution, etc., etc., etc. Now we got to get into the U.S. entrance into the war. What is finally going to be the thing that tips the U.S. into going into this war? So before we go any further, let's just have a quick little reminder. Remember, academic kids, y'all have your study guide due by Monday. Honors kids, y'all are supposed to have finished your All Quiet on the Western Front novel by Monday, and you need to get started on your postings. So with that also, remember, academic has their next test on Tuesday and Wednesday for F period. Honors, your next test is on Monday. Just a heads up. So, big thing about the U.S. entrance into the war. Germany is going to recommence this concept known as unrestricted submarine warfare. On February 1st, 1917, the German submarines began to go out and they started to sink and destroy other civilian and non-military passenger vessels, trying to break the British blockade that was starving Germany out. So also, there was another big thing. So these are the two reasons why the U.S. finally entered the war. Now, this is a big one. This one's also a controversial one. Arthur Zimmerman, a German ambassador, according to the British, sent a message to Mexico telling them to attack the United States, to reconquer land in the United States that had been taken from them. Because for those of you who don't know, but you will learn quite a bit of this in U.S. history when you get there next year with Miss Palladino, who's amazing in and of herself. She is going to be talking to y'all about the Mexican-American War. Now, the Mexican-American War that came before the U.S. Civil War in the early 1800s is going to see the growth of the United States in this concept that they had known as Manifest Destiny, where they took Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, and a lot of these other large areas from Mexico. Then they will become annexed into the United States. So the Germans apparently thought, under Arthur Zimmerman, that they should send a telegram to the Mexican government saying that we will give you guns, tanks, things needed to fight this war for you to go in and take back land that had been stricken from you in that war. Here's our full support. Now, this is very controversial because there are claims that the British created this telegram. There are claims that it was a doctored telegram. There are claims aplenty, right? Now, I also believe, though, there's a third reason why the U.S. truly got involved in World War I. With the oncoming Russian Revolution. Look, February 1st, 1917, unrestricted warfare starts. April 1917. February/March of 1917 is when the Russian Revolution started. I truly also believe that the United States felt that if they did not get involved in the war, if the Russians were to completely drop out, which of course they did, then the Eastern Front would be taken over, and there's a chance that the Germans may be able to refocus their entire idea and war onto the Western Front and end up possibly coming out with a victory. I truly believe that the U.S. saw a terrible thing on the horizon and decided to act. So war was declared on Germany in April of 1917. So with that, you've got a lot of different little things. So right here, you actually have the apparent copy of the Zimmermann telegram. So with this note, the Americans use it as their justification for entering World War I. So, as you can see right here, directly quoted from the telegram, we intend to begin on the 1st of February, unrestricted submarine warfare. There we go. We got our recommencement of unrestricted submarine warfare. Talking about how the Germans are apparently going to start sinking passenger vessels, anything they can find to try and tip the war in their favor, hoping to finally maybe break the British blockade. Of course, as we know, it was directly affecting Germany due to hunger riots, revolts going on in Germany, and a lot of common German citizens calling for an end to the war due to the fact of malnourishment, malnutrition, and starving on the home front of Germany. Now, as you can see, we intend to begin on the 1st of February unrestricted submarine warfare, and we should endeavor in spite of this to keep the United States of America neutral. In the event of this not succeeding, we decided to make a proposal to Mexico for an alliance on the basis that we will make war together, make peace together, and give generous financial support and understanding on our part that Mexico is to reconquer the lost territory in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. So as you can see, this is going to be a major tipping point into the war. Now, of course, like we said, there are claims that this was fabricated, that the British actually wrote it. There's a lot of conspiracy theories and hootenanny involved with it. However, you can see this visual representation of the Zimmermann telegram, which will be a test question that you have on Monday for honors, and on Tuesday for A&D, and on Wednesday for F period. This right here is a great physical representation of the Zimmermann telegram. As you can tell with the German evil figure. Of course, now, granted, the Germans weren't evil in a sense in this war. This is just an American political cartoon trying to represent this message from Germany. So with it, you see that them wearing their German infantry helmet with the spike, and this is yet just another piece of propaganda. And he's trying to offer financial support to Mexico, and he's pointing towards Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. So the craziest things are occurring. Now, jumping back real quick, now notice we say that the U.S. is going to declare war on Germany in April of 1917. It is, however, going to take America some time to get mobilized. Now, mobilized, again, is a very key important term when you're talking about World War I. Mobilization, of course, is preparing yourself for war, getting your troops in order, getting your weapons in order, getting transportation figured out, training your men. And this was going to be a big step for America, because apparently we only had a standing military of about 133,000 infantry ready to go at that given moment. You cannot enter a worldwide war with 133,000 men. It's just not going to cut it. So the United States enters in with the Selective Service Act, which many of y'all don't have to sign, but I did. So go ask your dad about the Selective Service Act. All young men in the United States have to sign that act saying that we are eligible for the draft. So the Americans are going to use the draft and conscription to enroll American soldiers into World War I. And by June of 1917, they have an army of at least 2 million preparing for war. And by 1918, you've got 2 million American soldiers on the ground. Because remember, the departure of Russia. This is going to be a short essay question on your test. The departure of Russia from World War I does help lead to the U.S. involvement. The United States was not going to stand idly by while some of their allies, not direct allies, but allies all the same, were going to be destroyed in this war if Germany was able to refocus their intentions. Now remember, again though, was Germany on its way out no matter what? Probably, because revolts in Germany were crushing them. Jot this number down real quick. It's very, very important. 500,000. It is believed that 500,000 Germans died from malnutrition and starvation due to the British North Sea blockade. That is ridiculous. So you had an entire country of people starving to death due to these blockades set up by the British. The crazy thing about it is now, blockades are not even allowed to be used in war anymore. You cannot use a blockade in war anymore. It has been outlawed in the agreements of warfare. So these hunger riots and revolts that were going on in Germany are going to lead Germany to dropping out of the war officially. Now, with the help of the American forces, the Allies are going to push the Central Powers all the way back through France. This is another important date I need you to write down. On November 9th, 1918, Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicates and runs away to the Netherlands. It's kind of convenient, right, that one of the guys who helped usher in this war, now, he's not to blame for the war, but he helped usher it in, can just allow millions to die, but just gets to quit his job and then go live in a neutral country. So November 9th, he leaves, and the Weimar Republic is what replaces him, spelled W-E-I-M-A-R, Republic, this group of democratically elected people in Germany replaces him, and on November 11th, they call for an armistice, or an end to the fighting in World War I. November the 11th, 1918, at 11 a.m., because on the 11th day of the 11th hour of the 11th month in 1918, World War I ended. 11/11/11. Imagine making a wish on that day. It'd be crazy, right? So now, in 1918, this is going to end, and we officially celebrate this holiday every single day, or not every single day, every single year in the United States. We do not call it Armistice Day anymore, is what we originally called it. We actually now call it Veterans Day. And so we celebrate Veterans Day every November the 11th in the United States to commemorate the end of World War I. So now, though, it's not going to be just as easy as being like, poop, all right, we're done, everybody's done, we're going to just cut out, war's done, whatever. It's not going to be that simple, all right? It's definitely not going to be that simple. So what you got to understand is you got a lot of pieces to pick up after yourself. Oh, and then, I don't know, a massive sickness kills even more people worldwide. So then, okay, it just couldn't go right. It just couldn't go well for everybody coming out of World War I. You got millions of soldiers dead. Some figures say 10 million. Some figures say 20 to 30 million due to the inability to find or document bodies during World War I. You got millions of people wounded. You got millions of civilians dead from bombing raids and hunger revolt, or hunger, I guess. And then you've also got blockades killing millions. And then out of nowhere, a pandemic hits, which of course we are in the midst of now. You are in virtual school right now due to the coronavirus. But a different virus broke out in 1918. Jot this down. It was called the Spanish flu, but what it actually was the H1N1 virus. And that infection spread over the entire world, killing 20 million people worldwide. It did not originate in Spain. It was known as the Spanish flu because Spain was some of the first to actually issue articles and documentation of the virus itself. And those reports emanating out of Spain, so many people began to call it the Spanish flu. Some of the cities in the United States that were hit the worst by it were New York and Philadelphia. And they had some extremely strict quarantine measures that they were going through, but you guys are doing the noble thing right now, and you're doing the same thing that people did in 1918, and you're trying to fight this virus off, which is a very commendable, and I appreciate y'all doing what you're doing. Now, the U.S., France, and Britain are going to be called the Big Three after this war, and they are going to be the ones that enter into negotiations to try and bring about the end of the war itself and the reparations, that's not the right word, the repairing of Europe following World War I. So these are the guys that are going to be in charge of this. You got David Lloyd George right here. You got Orlando from Italy. You've got the Lorax. Just kidding. It's not the Lorax. That is Georges Clemenceau. Georges Clemenceau, the Prime Minister of France. And then you have right here our American President, Woodrow Wilson. Okay? Woodrow Wilson. Very important guy. Now, he didn't get everything accomplished that he wanted to get accomplished because America, of course, came in and we entered into the Paris Peace Conference with a level head, or at least tried to. When Woodrow Wilson approached the Paris Peace Conference, he decided that there were a lot of hostilities. There's a lot of angst right now. A lot of y'all are mad. A lot of y'all are very upset because you feel a needless war happened, which, let's be honest, needless war did happen. It was an absolute calamity. And one terrible thing led to another terrible thing, which led to another terrible thing, and it's absolutely awful. And also, just as a little random fact, in November of 1918, other areas of the line in World War I, places like in the Ottoman Empire and then also on areas of the Western Front, many men didn't know the war was over until over a month later. So there were over 1,000 men that died, and that's a lowball number, I'm guessing. Men that died even though the war was actually over, right? So we have some countries that are extremely upset. They're all looking for someone to blame. So the document that begins to come out of the Paris Peace Conference is a treaty known as the Treaty of Versailles. Jot that down, underline it, circle it, make it look like it's exploding. It's an extremely important document. Now, here's the thing. The U.S., Woodrow Wilson, refuses to sign this treaty coming out because he believed that it would be unfair and it would lead to another war. And he wasn't wrong, okay? We will get into that stuff later on in the next unit, talking about how the implications of the Treaty of Versailles help create an environment that welcomes fascism, which is the worst thing ever. So then, instead, Woodrow Wilson suggested his 14 points. Woodrow Wilson had a list of 14 things that he thought could be used to help avoid another large-scale war like World War I. And it was simple stuff. It called for, fair trade over the seas, no more unrestricted submarine warfare, splitting up the Ottoman Empire and then retaining it to its original Turkish area, splitting up empires, calling for self-determination. It's a very simple document. And another big one that it actually called for, jot this down, it's very important, called for a League of Nations to be established, a co-op of countries to help avoid another large-scale war. So that's a huge thing that actually came out of the 14 points. But the problem is that the European leaders like Georges Clemenceau, remember the guy that looked like the Lorax from 2 seconds ago? He refused to accept Woodrow Wilson's 14 points. He said God himself only has 10, talking about the commandments, of course. He thought they were rubbish. He didn't like them. He thought that they were bad, and he thought they were too lenient because he was looking for someone to blame. The European powers are going to kick the 14 points aside, and they're going to pick and choose what they really like out of it. The League of Nations is one of the only things that they actually keep, but they want to blame the Central Powers for war. As you can see, here is another political cartoon of the 14 points itself, trying to say it's the only way to peace, or only way out, Wilhelm. And he's just marching his way up the 14 steps, or the 14 points, to peace. However, the aftermath is going to be the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles would be the document that was brought in after World War I. Now, against Woodrow Wilson's advisement, they decided to go with the Treaty of Versailles instead. And with the Treaty of Versailles, Austria-Hungary was broken up into several new countries. The Ottoman Empire was broken up as well. Establishment of a small place called Yugoslavia, which does not exist anymore. The Treaty of Versailles, though, is going to directly blame Germany for the war. Now, they even forced Germany to sign a part of it that was called the War Guilt Clause. Put that in quotes right now. Next to blame Germany for the war, right here, put the War Guilt Clause. The War Guilt Clause that Germany was forced to sign said that they accepted full blame for this war. Now, that's an intense thing to accept blame for. What would have started as a small skirmish between Austria and Serbia, which then rolled wildly out of order, is now blaming Germany for a war, which is going to roll wildly out of order again, leading to World War II. So this is a very, very intense time. Now, Germany is going to be blamed for the war, and they are going to be forced to pay war reparations. Now, reparations are payments equal to the cost of repairing, in a sense, Europe from this war. Now, the equal amount of $2.7 trillion in modern money is how much Germany is going to have to pay back. And did they pay it back? They actually did. Germany signed its last payment to the United States in November of 2011 and officially completed paying off German war reparations from World War I in 2011, almost 100 years later after the war itself started. Now, this is also going to take land from Germany as well. It's going to create this area known as the Rhineland, which is right off the Rhine River on the border of France and Germany, and it's going to say that you are not allowed to hold an army in this area whatsoever. Speaking of armies, add these two to the list as well. It's going to strip Germany of its navy, and it's also going to force them to bring down their military numbers to a meager 500,000. So it's forcing Germany into a point where they cannot wage war ever again. And the League of Nations was going to be created, which of course was this co-op of 40 nations made to negotiate disputes to avoid future war. It would kind of be like if I had Casey Williams on one side and she was the representative from France, and then I had Kaylee Roche on the other side, and she's the representative from Spain, right? And they're about to go to war with each other. The League of Nations would come in with me at the head, and I'd be like, oh, I'm the Netherlands. Don't do that. Let's just talk it out. Like that would be the League of Nations, right? And a co-op made to try and discuss and avoid these things. It's not going to work because it doesn't have an army. All right. So now, and anyway, just don't get me started. So the big thing about it is, as you can tell, this is directly blaming Germany for this war, and it's a very tough situation to get into because coming to the conclusion, this thing was called the Paris Peace Conference, not the Paris Blame Conference, but it is going to help directly lead to World War II. Now, of course, here is the biggest death toll that it put on Germany. This right here being the German expenditures for the war. The Germans spent the most amount of money on this war. Money you spend on a war is money you're not getting back, especially if you lose. They spent $39 billion. The British spent $38 billion, almost bankrupting their entire economy. Now, Britain, however, came out on the winning side. So they were getting some of this money back now in these war reparations. So with that, though, now what it caused was hyperinflation. Jot that down. The German economy was destroyed by hyperinflation. Because after the war was over, now that Germany has to pay all these reparations back, it led to extreme poverty in Germany because their money was worth practically nothing, because their war reparations had to be paid back on a very regular basis. So the German government began to just print money like it was going out of style to try and keep up with these war reparation payments. And as you can see, it just kept going along. And then as they just kept printing money and the Germans became aware that there was more money in the economy, just whoosh, hyperinflation occurred. And what's going to happen is you're going to end up with money that's worth practically nothing. So this right here is a couple of examples of how worthless the German money was coming out of World War I. At the end of World War I, you could see children playing with stacks of money. Stacks of Deutschmarks is what they're called. Their money is not called a dollar, it's called a Deutschmark. So these Deutschmarks, they were just building castles out of them because that's how worthless they were. This man is wallpapering his home with Deutschmarks because that's how worthless they were. And this woman made a dress out of Deutschmarks because that's how worthless they were. Hyperinflation is going to crush the German economy, leaving room for the rise of fascist dictators. Now, this is the last thing, the very last thing you have for your unit on World War I. America, the United States, and Woodrow Wilson refused to be involved in this new League of Nations. We never joined it because we did not like how Germany wasn't going to be allowed to join it. We refused to be involved of it, and we never ratified the Treaty of Versailles because we believed that it was going to help lead to another world war. So with that, that is the end of your unit. Remember, you have honors, test on Monday. Tuesday, test for academic A and D. Wednesday, test for academic F period. I will see you guys then. Y'all have a good one.